to promote.
Hello and welcome. I'm Sumy and you're watching World Report on News 6 World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. US President Donald Trump says Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has not yet approved the US brokered peace proposal aimed at ending the war with Russia. Talks in Florida have wrapped up after 3 days, but Trump has expressed disappointment that Zelensky has not reviewed the plan. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that talks with US representatives on a peace plan have been constructive, though not easy. He is also set to meet European leaders and officials from the UK, France, and Germany today. At least 7 people were injured when Russian drones hit an apartment block in Okhtyrka, northeastern Ukraine. Emergency crews rescued residents from upper floors, while others took shelter in the basement. US President Donald Trump has said that trade talks with Canada are ongoing, adding, "We'll work it out." He's met with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney and Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum to discuss the US-Mexico-Canada trade agreement ahead of its 2026 review. Thailand has launched airstrikes on Cambodian military facilities after both sides accused each other of violating a Trump-brokered ceasefire, with 1 Thai soldier killed and 4 wounded amid heavy border clashes. As Bangkok says 385,000 civilians are being evacuated, while Cambodia denies retaliation. India's aviation regulator DGCA has granted Indigo Airlines a one-time 24-hour extension to respond to a show cause notice issued on December 6. The regulator has warned that failure to comply by 6 p.m. today could lead to ex parte action. Hong Kong's election saw near record low turnout of 31.9% amid public fury over a blaze that has killed at least 159 people. The turnout only barely exceeded the previous election, as anger towards China-backed authorities have intensified. Australian firefighter has died after being struck by a tree while battling a bushfire north of Sydney. More than 50 fires are burning across New South Wales, with authorities warning of a high-risk bushfire season this summer. Now for this hour, we start with Thailand and Cambodia. Earlier this morning, the Thai army has reported that a fresh round of clashes has taken place along the disputed border it shares with Cambodia. According to a former statement made initially by the Thai military, 1 Thai soldier was killed and 7 others were wounded. The Thai army spokesperson has now formally spoken on the matter, saying that their intelligence has come to know about Cambodia significantly increasing its troops and firearms in the border near regions. Moreover, Cambodia has also reportedly gained the tendency to use long-range weapons in the inner areas of Thailand, which may be a threat to civilian infrastructure in those areas. Let's listen into what more the army spokesperson has shared.
ในช่วงเช้ามืดที่ผ่านมานะครับมีการยิงและเกิดการปะทะในหลายพื้นที่นะหลายจุดจนกระทั่งรุ่งเช้านะครับและเริ่มมีการปะทะนะครับหนักขึ้นตั้งแต่เวลาประมาณช่วง 5 นาฬิกาของเมื่อเช้ามืดเป็นต้นมานะครับคือทางฝ่ายกัมพูชาเองมีทั้งการใช้ปืนเล็กนะครับปืนใหญ่อาวุธยิงสนับสนุนต่างๆเนี่ยเข้ามาจนเป็นเหตุให้กำลังพลเราได้รับบาดเจ็บและเสียชีวิตนะครับในพื้นที่ช่องบกนะครับและยังพบหลักฐานว่าทางฝ่ายกัมพูชาเองเนี่ยได้เปิดพื้นที่การปะทะเพิ่มเติมอีกในหลายพื้นที่ด้วยกันในช่วงเช้ามืด
The Thai Army spokesperson has also added that the airstrikes by Thai Air Force were only retaliatory in nature and strictly targeted Cambodian weaponry bases to prevent further escalation. Meanwhile, the Cambodian Defense Ministry has also briefed its side of the story on this morning's clashes. Let's in fact listen into the details shared by the Cambodian military spokesperson.
ថ្ងៃទី8 ខែធ្នូឆ្នាំ 2025 នេះ
យោធាថៃបានបន្តបើកការបាញ់ប្រហារសារជាថ្មីមកលើកងកម្លាំងកម្ពុជានៅគ្រប់ទិសនៅក្នុងយុទ្ធភូមិភាគទី4ចាប់ពីវេលាប្រមាណម៉ោង 5:04 នាទីព្រឹកនៅវេលាម៉ោង 8:10 នាទីយោធាថៃបានបាញ់ផ្សែងពុលចូលតំបន់ភ្នំខ្មោចយ៉ាងច្រើន 11 នៅវេលាម៉ោង 8:14 នាទីយោធាថៃបានបាញ់ផ្សែងពុលបន្ថែមនៅក្នុងតំបន់ប្រាសាទព្រះវិហារនៅវេលាម៉ោង 9:05 នាទីយោធាថៃបានវាយប្រហារមកលើកម្លាំងកម្ពុជាដោយប្រើប្រាស់ប្រភេទយន្តហោះចម្បាំង F-16 បន្ថែមទៀតនៅក្នុងភូមិសាស្ត្រស្រុកស្រអែមខេត្តព្រះវិហារ
Additionally, the Cambodian spokesperson has said that the latest attacks by the Thai army has caused injuries to some of its civilians and damage to property. The Cambodian Defense Ministry has condemned these attacks and accused Thailand of breaching the ceasefire agreement, which was signed by both nations, in presence of Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim and US President Donald Trump back in October. Now for this discussion, we welcome Dr. and Professor Asta Chadha. She's an Associate Professor of International Relations, joins us live from Ritsumeikan University, Kyoto, Japan. Thank you very much, Dr. Chadha, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, again, looking at this, the ceasefire that we were hopeful of is very fragile indeed, and it seems like it has not been lasting. How does historical border disputes in this region, how do you think this is shaping the current political incentives for both governments amid rising casualties and competing narratives of provocation?
Thank you, Asama, for having me to discuss this topic. Well, I mean, we know that, what Thailand and Cambodia have inherited is the same issue of colonial borders that a lot of other countries in the region are, pretty much suffering from. And the fact that their borders were not clearly demarcated, the fact that it has remained an open conflict for quite some time, since the decolonization process, always pointed to the fact that there could be a claim or there could be a counterclaim and a conflict at some point. However, the two countries had managed to maintain more or less peace across the borders. But we are seeing that, back in October, when they had signed a broader peace deal, specifically for after the 5-day conflict, the hope was that there would be no longer any such military conflict, at least. They can have their disagreements on where the borders lie or what temples and what territories lie on what part of the border, but there would at least not be casualties on either side. But this is very unfortunate that once again we are seeing counterclaims that are coming coupled together with a military standoff. The fact that Thai claims are that it's the Cambodian forces that had initiated an airstrike or an artillery and mortar fire, which they were retaliating to, and on the other hand you see Cambodia claiming quite the same thing, that we were not the ones that initiated it, we are not responding to any provocative action unless today that they did. So this in a way points to two things. One, that there is a complete breakdown of that ceasefire or of that broader peace deal that was signed back in October after the 5-day conflict in July. And two, it seems that it is very difficult to establish trust at this point, because if there continue to be claims and counterclaims, to which again there is very little to bring them to the discussion table. If they are willing to continue in this manner, this will continue to endanger the peace and stability in Southeast Asia.
And thank you for sharing that, Dr. Chadha. And now zooming out and including U.S. into our conversation, we remember that U.S. Helped broker this ceasefire, and U.S. has helped broker many ceasefire this year, including Gaza one and DRC and Rwanda one as well. But all of them, including this one, seem to be not holding. Do you think this is ineffective, or do you think there is something lacking in U.S.'s behalf, where it seems like Trump administration is more focused rather on just signing on papers rather than checking what's the reality on the ground?
I mean, absolutely, we cannot overlook the fact that, I mean, on one hand, whereas it was a good step, I would say, from the US government to step in and try to broker some sort of peace, not just in this particular conflict, but so many other conflicts. But, in some ways, the US role felt more like a high profile entry into a conflict to which US is not a party, and to try and broker it without enough discussion with the neighbors of the competing or conflicting parties seems to have been a bad move, specifically in this case. So even though Malaysian Prime Minister was definitely engaged in him trying to leverage his trade relations in a way to warn them of freezing any trade negotiations alongside President Trump, but we do not see the rest of the ASEAN in the same way coming together, trying to call for beyond them calling for restraint, that is. So their role has been minimal. They have been observer countries, but none of them have actually participated to the same extent, probably apart from Malaysia, in brokering this peace or in maintaining this, stability, at least in between Thailand and Cambodia. So that definitely points to the fact that this is not just one such conflict which is recurring. The fear is that many other such conflicts could just erupt, and then new ones could erupt as well, because clearly the US brokering or the US engagement has been quite ineffective.
100%. Thank you very much, Dr. Chadha, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you. And now we stay on this topic. Following these clashes, the Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has now urged both Thailand and Cambodia to exercise maximum restraint and avoid further conflict. He has also warned that such aggressive escalations fail the purpose of the ceasefire agreement and joint declaration reached between Thailand and Cambodia back in October this year. The Malaysian Prime Minister has also called on both nations to open news channels of communications, and that Malaysia is ready to support any steps required to restore peace between them and avert such violent incidents in the future. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Dr. Asta Chadha. She's an Associate Professor of International Relations from Ritsumeikan University, Kyoto. Thank you very much, Dr. Chadha, for staying with us. If I recall correctly, even in October, we discussed this together, and we both mentioned that we were surprised by the silence by the ASEAN members, and rather, you mentioned perhaps it could be because they are a business or economy-focused alliance rather than peace. Amid earlier clashes this year, this time looking at this, can we be hopeful that ASEAN members will be more involved, as we have seen Malaysia ask for more enforcement of this ceasefire this time?
I mean, that is exactly the hope, that the other ASEAN nations step in, but we must also understand the fact that Malaysia, specifically the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Anwar Ibrahim, was seen as a key facilitator, is precisely also because he was host of the ASEAN summit, at that point in Kuala Lumpur. So the fact that he took it upon himself to make sure that, he could facilitate a dialogue. And even currently, I mean, if you look at his statement, he's urging both the sides to again come to the negotiation table to make sure that there are no new clashes, and then asking them for restraint. I mean, in some ways, that is both the strength and also the weakness of ASEAN, as a multilateral platform, because they all work with consensus. There really isn't too much space of any one party being able to dictate the kind of peace or dictate the terms of anything to the others. So the only hope that we have is that, apart from Malaysia being the chair, the other nations too need to come in and participate in this. It is their region also. All of them get impacted if there is a fresh clash, or currently the way the situation is tense between Cambodia and Thailand, and it impacts the wider region as well. So to maintain both ASEAN's capability and capacity and effectiveness, so to prove that, and also the fact that ASEAN can work together and overcome their differences, and they don't necessarily need to depend on an outside party such as the United States to come and mediate peace. I mean, it's welcome, but they don't need them. I think for the sake of that, ASEAN nations need to step up, create a more direct mediation channel for all the countries that are part of ASEAN, to signify that the regional bloc's function is not just to try and maintain a stable trade, but also maintain peace among its members.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chadha, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our later discussion as well. Now, moving the focus on to Europe, at least 7 people were injured when Russian drones hit an apartment block in Okhtyrka, a city in northeastern Ukraine's Sumy region. Governor Ole Hirhorov has said that 2 of the injured were hospitalized while the others received treatment and were discharged. The multi-story building suffered heavy damage, but some residents reached the basement after air raid warnings. Emergency crews have rescued others from upper floors. The Sumy region, which borders Russia, has faced near daily shelling and drone attacks since Moscow's full-scale invasion of Ukraine began in 2022. Both sides deny targeting civilians, though thousands have passed away. Moscow has not commented on this latest attack so far. Now for this discussion, we welcome Professor Vasilin Popovsky. He's a professor and vice dean at Jindal Global Law School, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this fresh escalation, particularly in this Sumy region, can you tell us, do all the apartment buildings in that region have bunkers or bunkers in the basement for hiding, such as, what we know of the apartments that contain bunkers in Israel?
Well, I wouldn't call this bunkers, but they have an underground space where people go and spend an hour or two, depending on how long the alarms will go on. And once there is a clearance that the attacks have been gone down, and we see this daily. I speak to people in Ukraine, and they expect this almost daily, to have a siren and to be asked to vacate their apartment and to go down into the basement. Sometimes they tell me they don't do that, simply because it's so regular and so often that sometimes they simply don't have the time to evacuate and simply hope that their building will not be hit. And for that matter, exactly, we have incidents like the one yesterday, when people who are not evacuated suffered injuries. Yes, one of those days when we again and again hear the same thing. Russia is not cooperating with any peace deal, with any ceasefire. They keep bombing cities, and these are civilian targets. They are prohibited under international humanitarian law. Russia is only fighting civilians. They have no advance on the battlefield. They cannot achieve what their goals are, and that's why they hope for Donald Trump to bring them what they cannot achieve with military means. So that's the simple picture here. We will continue, unfortunately, to hear about civilian targets being hit, because that's the only thing Russia can do. They can injure some civilians, they can cut the electricity in some city for some hours, and if that is what Russia wants, that's really ridiculous. It's not a war fighting, it's simply disrupting the lives of civilians, specifically in the winter time now. It's very frustrating to have electricity cuts, to have sirens, drones, and so on.
Yes, this is amazing that Ukrainian people are so resilient, and thank you for enlightening us with that insight. Now, looking at U.S. statements from Trump, we heard that he has already sent a proposal to Ukraine, but he accuses Ukraine, or rather Zelensky, that he hasn't seen the proposal or reviewed the proposals yet. Now, how do you think, how aligned are these two countries, in your opinion?
Doing Ukraine and United States?
Yes.
Well, Ukraine is hoping for negotiations. They're always open. They always say, we want to cease the fire. We don't want to fight. But for that matter, we need some just proposals, something that really not award the aggressor with extra territory to start with, which is, again, very ridiculous. It's as if a robber comes to my apartment, takes 80% of my furniture, and then want the other 20% of the furniture to be signed in a treaty that I donate to the robbed my furniture. It's exactly the same. Russia is taking territories and they demand more territories as a reward for the aggression they already did. Instead of paying the cost of that, they want more rewards. And any proposal which somehow the incompetent Donald Trump administration tries to achieve here is no go, because nobody in the world will accept that, not only the Europeans. Every reasonable person in the world will smile at those proposals that Svitkov and Kushner are making, because this is not the way to do that. This is not a business transaction. It's not between a seller or buyer of a land and you need to reach the middle price, nothing like that. But these people are real estate agents like Witkoff and Trump. That's how they understand the world, like a business transaction where we need to find the middle ground between the two parties. No, not at all. This is nothing to do with the international relations, with the international law, with the UN Charter. And they make proposals that are unacceptable. And even Russia doesn't accept when somehow the Europeans and Ukrainians try to revise those proposals. No chance for peace. What United States should do is more sanctions on Russia and more support for Ukraine, including military support. And only when Putin is in the corner under pressure of US sanctions and a very firm talk that if he doesn't stop fire, nobody will trade with him anymore, nobody will talk with him anymore. Only such language will be understood in the Kremlin. And this is when, hopefully one day, we will have a chance for peace. The peace will come through very heavy sanctions on Russia and a very hard talk on Vladimir Putin.
Yes. With that, I would like to thank Professor Veselin Popovsky for always joining us and giving that insight and laying there out for us to understand it in a simple manner. Thank you very much. Now we move the focus on to Japan and China. Japan has pushed back against China's account of a weekend military encounter, disputing Beijing's claim that Japanese self-defense forces interfered with Chinese naval flight training. Tokyo's top government spokesperson, Chief Cabinet Secretary Minoru Kihara, has said that China's accusation that Japanese aircraft endangered a Chinese jet's safety was unfounded. His remarks follow comments from Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi, who said Chinese fighter jets had aimed their radar at Japanese aircraft near the Okinawa Islands, an assertion China rejects. The dispute unfolded as a Chinese carrier strike group carried out intensive air operations near Japan, accompanied by 3 missile destroyers. China's embassy has countered that Japanese aircraft had approached the Liaoning carrier too closely and posed a flight safety risk. The encounters come amid already heightened tensions in the region, with Tokyo warning that last month that it could respond to any Chinese military move against Taiwan if such actions were deemed a threat to Japan's security. Let's listen in.
自衛隊は安全な距離を保ちながら対領空侵犯措置の任務に当たっていたと報告を受けており、自衛隊の航空機が中国の航空機の安全な飛行を深刻に阻害したとの中国側の指摘は当たりません。冷静にかつ毅然と今後も対応してまいります。政府としては中国軍の我が国周辺海空域における動向について引き続き注視するとともに、我が国周辺海空域における警戒監視活動等に万全を期してまいります。
Now for this discussion, we welcome back Dr. Asta Chada. She's Associate Professor of International Relations, joins us live from Kyoto, Japan. Thank you very much, Dr. Chada, for staying with us. Now, the situation is escalating between Japan and China, as both accused each other of this. What are we to make of latest escalation, and why do you think China decided to choose the sea-near Okinawa in particular?
Well, thanks again for having me to discuss this issue.
Thank you.
I mean, a few days back, I think I was discussing this on your channel, that Taiwan had reported that, Chinese forces, specifically Chinese military forces, were surrounding East China Sea and Taiwan, and they were trying to monitor and conduct surveillance on any foreign ships and any foreign, military vessels that were passing through the region, in order to continue to, assess the presence of or the foreign presence around Taiwan Straits. And this incident came right after that. So the fact that Chinese military career group in some ways operating over international waters in southeast of Okinawa as it is a concern for Japan, as is the issue of Chinese military presence around the disputed Senkaku Island. But the fact that Japan claims that Chinese military aircraft twice logged their fire control radar on the Japanese ASDF aircraft, that is even more serious, because those kind of things could lead to dangerously, creating a dangerously hostile environment in the maritime space. That's one. And two, that also leads to some sort of curbing of freedom of navigation, which exists in and around, East China Sea or South China Sea, or in and around Japanese islands. So Japan lodging a strong protest is not only on its own behalf, the fact that this happened around Okinawa, and it happened on Okinawa, wherein we do know that US has its military base as well. But, this is extremely regrettable and dangerous, because this leads to a breakdown of some sort of trust that exists between different parties who are allowed to in some way operate their vessels in and around the maritime spaces. The other aspect of this conflict is the fact that China and Japan seem to be logged in this claims and counterclaims as to what actually happened and who did what first, and both of them seem to be saying that the other party has been monitoring, conducting surveillance, and harassing their aircrafts, which again shows that in the past few months the China-Japan relations have actually touched a record low, specifically with regard to Chinese retaliation against the Japanese Prime Minister's remarks regarding equating the Taiwanese security to that of Japanese security. So we see a complete, once again, I mean, this is very unfortunate that I came today to discuss the breakdown of trust among Southeast Asia, but that is pretty much the case when we look at East Asia as well.
With that, I would like to thank Dr. Chadha for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move the focus on to our next news. The US President Donald Trump has said that he would have a role in whether a proposed merger between Netflix and Warner Brothers should go forward, as the market share of a combined entity would raise concerns. Earlier, Netflix has agreed to buy Warner Brothers Discovery's television, film studios, and streaming division for $72 billion, a deal which would hand the control of one of the most prized assets in Hollywood to the streaming pioneer. Let's listen into what President Trump has shared.
I did. I met with Ted. I think he's fantastic. I think he's, in the history of Hollywood, has really been almost, you could say, nothing like what he's done. You'd go back to Louis B. Mayer, maybe, Metro Goldwyn Mayer, MGM. Ted has done an incredible job. I mean, he had a company that was very troubled 7 or 8 years ago, and he took it over, and he's really done a legendary job.
Now we move on to Australia. Australia is preparing to roll out a world-first ban on social media use for anyone under the age of 16. Beginning December 10th, major platforms including Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube will be required to remove underage accounts or face heavy fines. Students in Nantes have said that some platforms can be harmful while others can be useful. In Mumbai, one young woman has said that a full ban goes too far. Let's in fact listen into some of them.
ऑस्ट्रेलिया ने जो अभी फिलहाल सोशल मीडिया पे बच्चे लोगों के लिए जो बैन किया है, वो मुझे लगता है कि पर्सनली मुझे लग रहा है कि वो बहुत अच्छा काम है, क्योंकि उससे बच्चे लोग थोड़ा बाहर रहेंगे, उनको बाकी चीज़ों पे वर्कआउट करने के लिए बहुत चांस है. वही चीज़ अपने इधर.
So I think complete ban is wrong. It should be partially banned, because according to me, nothing is either black or white. Nothing is either very good or very bad. So I think there should be a partial ban, because when we see social media, there are many young entrepreneurs in both India and anywhere else, foreign also. So nowadays, the teenagers, the Gen Z, they are very active and doing really well. Good to some extent, but it's very bad if they get played by somebody, or if they get they can get bullied. Anything can happen, because people create their fake IDs and fool people, so it's not good. And so young children are not aware of it and they do it everything very in a fun way. They are very fun loving. This generation is very fun loving. So it leads to a lot of complications. So it's good actually, ban for.
Un peu du bateau, mais c'est juste vrai, faut juste être éduqué au sujet. Nous, on a grandi avec, on est au courant des risques, on peut se faire goumer, enfin tout ça. Ça peut arriver, oui, il y a des travers, mais aujourd'hui c'est là, quoi, donc on va pas le nier ou nier son existence.
Je pense que c'est une bonne chose d'interdire les réseaux sociaux. Après, il y a des réseaux sociaux qui sont mauvais, il y en a d'autres qui sont bons. Par exemple, pour communiquer, c'est quand même utile. Par exemple, WhatsApp ou les choses comme ça peut être bien. Mais après, il y en a certains comme X ou TikTok qui peuvent être problématiques.
Now we move on. The global debate highlights sharp differences over how far governments should go to protect young users without cutting them off from the online world. That's all we have time for. Keep watching News 6 World for more news updates from around the world.